What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over some tips to help you get some easy crown wins in Fortnite Reload. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below how many crown wins you've been able to get so far in Season 3. The first piece of advice is going to be counterintuitive to some people, and that is just going to be to land somewhere that isn't Retail Row, Pleasant Park, or Tilted Towers. From my experience, these are far and away the most populated POIs in Fortnite Reload. And if you want to have, fun and fight people and have a high action game, no problem landing there. But if you want to win and it is your goal to get on and win as much as possible and as easy as possible, I think it's best to avoid these locations because they are very populated. The early game fights usually take a while, and there's not as much of a need to land in these POIs because there's a lot of loot on the reload map and 100% chest spawn rate. Like some of the smaller POIs don't have as much loot, but with having 100% chest spawn rate and a lot of loot in between POIs, I feel like you can definitely land at some of the lesser contested areas and make them work relatively easily. Whereas like landing at Retail, Pleasant, or Tilted, you're going to be heavily contested, and so you're going to have to split that loot with other players, potentially die off spawn, or potentially get into a situation where you're just continuously fighting off spawn the same team over and over again. And for that situation, for that reason, I think it's best to not thirst your knocked players, especially in the early game. Again, if all you want to do is get high kill games and eliminate other players, then thirsting the knocked opponent can be a good idea, because then you start the timer for them to respawn, and if you don't kill their teammate in that timer, then they come back and then you get to eliminate them again. But the problem comes, especially off spawn in duos, like early game, I think the respawn timer is 2 seconds. So let's say you knock a player, you immediately thirst them, and then 3 seconds later you eliminate and thirst their teammate. However, that first guy is already back in the game by the time that happens, and so now you probably have a rinse and repeat of that where you eliminate the player that came back, but now the other player is already respawned again, and you're just wasting so much time fighting the same team over and over and over again that you never really get to actually loot your POI, you never get to leave your POI, and then because of that, your entire game is just kind of scuffed, and you probably have loot that you're not very happy with. So in the early game, I like to not thirst knocked opponents and just try to clear the POI. I'm just worried about getting the squad wipe and getting them out of the game. That way I can loot my POI in peace, get as much loot as I want, and then hopefully rotate out of the area. And a thing that you need to keep in mind with this as well is that the storm moves pretty fast in Reload. A lot of my games are under like 12 minutes. So if you're at Pleasant Park and you're fighting the same team over and over again off spawn, you're just wasting time, and you might end up in a situation where you're not even in zone. Now you have to travel through the storm to the safe area. All the while you're just continuously fighting the same team as they kind of like cycle in and out of the game as you eliminate them. So I like to land at if you want to win, I would highly recommend land at a lesser contested POI. If there's any other teams there, play to eliminate them and not just thirst the knock right away. Just leave that knocked opponent there. Them not respawning is a good thing, because then that's more time you have to eliminate their teammate. And be mindful of storm. Like as soon as like storm spawns, you kind of want to check it and see where it is. That way you kind of know if you're going to have to leave or not, because like I said, the storm does move very quickly, and it does come pretty quickly in this game mode. Another huge aspect of this game mode that is just, I think if you do this, you will probably have a higher win rate, is going to be to have somebody in your team carry bunkers or shield bubbles, but preferably porta bunkers. There's a lot of wide open area on the map in this game mode, and then also fights often can take a decent amount of time to play out because of the respawning nature of the game mode and because of the fast revives. That having the bunkers and being able just to put cover wherever you want is a huge advantage, and when you get into endgame, this is also going to be essential. So I pretty much always carry porta bunkers in this game mode. And I'm always worried about like making sure I have a full stack, especially going into in-game. When you're just traveling around out in the open area, probably just walk around with your bunkers out. That way you can immediately throw them if a fight does break out. And if I'm about to fight another team, I often do want to like put my bunker first and then fight them from inside the bunker. Another thing you're going to want to carry is heals, obviously. I know a lot of people have had a hard time getting heals in Reload. And I would say if that is you need to make use of the vending machines. Each POI has like several vending machines, it seems, but even then there's some kind of out in the areas in between the POIs, and you will see them on your radar when you're close to them. And these vending machines sell big pots for 50 gold, and you can carry 3 in a stack. So for 150 gold, you can have a full stack of heals. It used to cost 150 gold per big pot, and so it was more expensive, and then maybe you wouldn't want to be buying them all the time. But pretty much anytime I come across a vending machine in Reload, I just buy a full stack of big pots if I'm not already full, because 150 gold for 3 is really not a meaningful amount of gold. So I'd highly recommend taking advantage of the vending machines if you are someone who has a hard time getting heals, or if you have to like regain over the course of the game, which is something you will have to do in Reload because of the way the nature of the game works. And when it comes to that, if you do get knocked, don't be very worried about respawning. Like you can choose to respawn in this game mode, and I don't think that's a bad play, because if you get knocked and your teammate probably isn't going to be able to, the revives are faster in this game mode, and that's something to keep in mind. But if your teammate isn't going to be able to revive you, you can hit the respawn button and then you're back into the game in probably less than like 6 seconds, especially in duos. The respawn times are different between duos and squads, but I pretty much always play duos. But either way, the respawn time is very quick, so don't be hesitant to kind of use that, and then just come back and land on your loot if it's safe to. Land on a different angle and maybe help your teammate out with the fight that they're, you know, taking part in, because you do spawn with a gray AR. I just think the idea that you can respawn shouldn't be ignored. Like, and you'll have more health as well. You come back with full health instead of just the 30 that you would have gotten revived with. But if it's going to take your teammate like 20 seconds to be able to like revive you, then like that's not how long it takes. But like, let's say they're doing other stuff and then they eventually get to the point where they can revive you. At that point, you might have as well have just respawned, and then you would have already been in the game for quite some time. When someone does respawn, they will rift from like above their teammates. There will be the rift noise, and you can kind of like hear it. And this can be helpful to kind of pinpoint where the teammate is. If you're fighting a team and you knock one and then the other one runs away, and you hear that rift close to you when their teammate respawns a few seconds later, then you know that that player is kind of in that direction and still relatively close. So that is something that can be a decent kind of alert to you that that player is still nearby. I think supply drops are also essential to get in Fortnite Reload. Not only are you going to get good weapons out of them, typically, you're going to get heals. And this will also be a great spot for you to get mobility items or get more porta bunkers. I'm not sure how it works exactly, if it's like guaranteed to give you a cover item and mobility item, but it seems like each supply drop is pretty stacked. And so if you are coming off spawn and having to regain the match, getting those supply drops can be really helpful. Like if you identify an area of the map where there's just several supply drops posted up already, then you can land there, get those drops, and then you're probably going to be able to get back involved in the game. But even if you aren't needing to regain the match, I still think getting these drops are really helpful for refreshing your bunkers and refreshing your mobility. And if you are someone that's consistently getting supply drops, I feel like it frees you up to use your bunkers and your mobility more in a fight. If you're just going to hide all game, then you might need to be concerned about, you know, do I use a bunker here or not, or do I use a shockwave here or not? But if you know that you're going to be consistently getting drops throughout the course of the game, then you'll probably get more bunkers and you'll probably get more mobility anyway. So I feel like you can more loosely use them in a fight. It doesn't mean you want to waste it all the time, but I feel like you kind of know what I mean. Like if you know you're going to get more, you can easily use them in a fight and know that more will come. When it comes to like rotating throughout the mid game, I think it's best to avoid getting involved in tilted towers. Like I talked about at the start of the video, if you just want to get kills, go tilted. You'll get a lot of kills, or you'll get in a lot of fights at least. But the fights at tilted often, I feel like, just lock you into a game where you're just fighting at tilted all game, and then you eventually just get third-partied anyways. Tilted is surrounded by mountains, so if there is a lot of fighting in tilted, you can just kind of post up on these mountains and hold people as they come out. But either way, I think if you want to win the game, not being involved in those fights, obviously you don't deal with the chaos of consistently fighting and consistently getting third-partied, but you're able to conserve your heals, conserve your mobility, conserve your bunkers. And then, like I've said, a lot of times I feel like the people that come out of tilted just end up getting cleaned up by a third party anyways. So I would recommend just avoiding tilted throughout the course of the game and rotate alongside of those mountains and control those mountains if you can. For the end game and reload, I feel like it slows down a lot, especially after respawning is disabled. You get to the point in the game where there's no more respawning, and then it plays out like a normal BR match at that point. But I feel like the end game just plays out way slower in reload. I don't know why this is. And this is partially why bunkers are so important. But as always in in-game, it's good to keep track of where other players and other teams are, because this can make it easier for you to predict where the other teams are, and then also just not get third-partied. If you know one team is to your left and one team is to your right, then and you start fighting the team on your left, that team on your right is probably going to get ready to third party you. So be, you know, aware of that and ready to respond to that and potentially not get as caught off guard by their third party. Just keeping track of, you know, how many teams are alive, where you last saw them, I feel like makes it easier for you to kind of know which areas of the map are safe and know which areas of the map are likely, you know, populated by another team, even if you haven't seen them there yet. Once respawning is disabled, though, I think thirsting knocked opponents is fine. Like, the reason why I was saying you don't want to thirst knocked opponents is because they're probably just going to come back anyways. So letting them stay knocked and waste that time where they could have been coming back is ideal. It gives you more time to eliminate their teammate. But once respawning is disabled, you can just go ahead and thirst them. They're not going to come back. And now that team is at like a permanent numbers disadvantage for the rest of the game. And that's huge for you. And that's kind of 101 in game. If it's like duos and it's 2v2, you get a knock on the team. Now it's a 2v1, and it's like really easy for you to kind of push that advantage and get that elimination. So anytime you can get a knock and thirst that person and then get your team a numbers advantage for the rest of the game on that other team is huge. And then if the game does get into the point where there's moving zones, I feel like often just getting ahead and using your mobility to like get ahead of zone and then throw down bunkers first is a pretty easy way to close out the game. It's especially in duos, I feel like it typically only goes like first moving. And so if you're the one that gets ahead and uses bunkers, you can just hold the other players and it's fine. If it is a very populated game for whatever reason, like let's say you're going into first moving and there's still like 5 duos left. This is kind of unreasonable, but let's just say that's the case. I wouldn't want to play the ideal positioning. I would want to like get ahead of zone and then get somewhere that's kind of low key and then just chill there. Because if it's 5 duos left, you're not going to end the game on that rotation, right? Like you're probably just going to maybe shoot at one team and then get hopped on by another team. Then even if you eliminate that team that hopped on you, there's going to be another one doing so out of desperation. But if it's like a 2v2, you're going into moving, it's just one team left, then you can kind of get ahead of zone, play the ideal positioning, and play to end the game. Like how you're going to play these moving zones is going to be dictated, I think, by how many players are left alive and if you can end the game in that zone or not. If you can end the game in that zone, then you can play to win. If there's too many people left alive and you're probably not going to win the game on that zone, then playing to like exist and put yourself into future moving zones, I think is the ideal way to play. But that's just kind of, again, kind of in-game 101 somewhat. Before we end the video, just a few things I wanted to touch on with the bunkers, because I've had so many end games in Reload that kind of play out around the porta bunkers, is going to be that you can stack them. You can stack bunkers on top of bunkers and like essentially ramp rush with the bunkers. This is really good to do when, you know, maybe you're on neutral ground with your opponents. Maybe you're on a hill and you had to bunker and they're above you. You can stack the bunkers to like get a height advantage. And it's something that catches a lot of players off guard because I feel like a lot of people don't see it that often. There's probably people watching this video right now that didn't know this was a thing. The easiest way to stack the bunkers, I think, is just to look at the corner of your current bunker and then throw it there. And if you hold the bunker out, you'll get a preview of where it's going to go. Sometimes this is just off, but either way, when you look at the corner, you'll see that it's going to stack. And once you get kind of familiar with doing this, I feel like it's really easy to do. And there's a lot of situations where it can be helpful to just, you know, have high ground. We all know high ground is advantageous, but being able to stack your bunkers on top of each other and get high ground is even more advantageous. Also, if you're dealing with an enemy team that's in a bunker and you want to push them, sometimes just throw, or not sometimes, but like you can throw your bunker at the front of their bunker, and then the tires that are typically on the front of your bunker will knock them back if they walk too far forward. And this is another thing that like a lot of people don't, not a lot of people, but there's some people out there that don't know about this. And if you use this in a fight, you can catch them off guard and you knock them out of their bunker, and then you can just kind of walk up yours and beam them. And again, it makes the fight super chaotic for the enemy team. So just throwing your bunker at their bunker is a decent play if you're going to push them. And then another thing about pushing enemy bunkers is that you can mantle up. If you just try to mantle from the front, you'll get pushed back from the tires. But if you mantle on the corner, you'll be able to mantle just fine. And again, this is another thing that like maybe catches people off guard, not really, but it just gives you more options on how you want to play the fight. If you're in a situation where you want to mantle it, just look towards the corner and you'll be able to do so. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this helpful, informative, interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.